When was the last time you visited Chicago's free zoo? No, yeah, really. Lincoln Park Zoo is free. From outings with family and friends to a picture-perfect day spot, Lincoln Park Zoo is budget-friendly and great for all with many things to do. Even better, Lincoln Park Zoo has one of the largest zoo-based conservation and science programs in the country, and they run the nation's top zoo-based animal welfare science program. So your visit makes an impact. This summer, visit the pride of Chicago, Lincoln Park Zoo. Go to lpzoo.org to plan your next visit to Chicago's free zoo. What's up, y'all? Have you heard about the latest hit from the Second City? It's called The Devil is in the Detours, and it's being hailed as gutsy by the Tribune and another crackerjack cast of talented, charismatic performers, clearly creative and a joy to watch by the Sun-Times. That was very visual and descriptive. This is the Second City's 112th main stage review, and it's a hilarious and unhinged descent into a dimension where chaos reigns. The show runs Tuesdays through Sundays at the Second City in Old Town. Grab your tickets now at secondcity.com and go on and join the fun. Today on CityCast Chicago, we have talked about the traffic, we've talked about the hype, and we've talked about the after parties, but the other huge component of the Democratic National Convention, the protests. Ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris's big speech tonight, we're hearing from protesters on why they're out marching. It's Thursday, August 22nd. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Producer Michelle Navarro was out in Union Park for the rally and protest that took place this past Monday, the first day of the Democratic National Convention. But that was just one of several demonstrations that have been going on this week. Michelle, where else have people been protesting?
So right before the DNC started, on Sunday, there was a smaller demonstration downtown on Michigan Avenue. There was around a few hundred people, but there was a really big police presence, which had really been the marker for this week. I think this is when people were starting to wonder, what was this going to look like for the remainder of the week, because it was right before it.
Those pictures on Sunday, like you said, really set the stage, because we knew that protests were expecting thousands of thousands. But even for this early Sunday protest with just a couple hundred people, the police response, at least for that one, was disproportionate. But it seemed organized, and it seemed like they knew exactly where they planned to be in regards to protest routes throughout the week as early as Sunday.
Yeah. And then on Monday, right, the first day, the march kind of led us to Park 578, which is from viewing distance of the United Center. And it was said that after the rally and march, people kind of still stood around there, and around at least 13 people were arrested because they tried to break through the security perimeter around the UC. There was also a smaller camp out in Humboldt Park where they marched towards the United Center. This was an out-of-town group organizing around homelessness and poverty. But that was on Monday. Tuesday, about 60 people were arrested at a protest outside the Israeli consulate in West Loop. This demonstration was much smaller than the Union Park march, but it did have the most conflict. It was seen that police were really cracking down on this unpermitted demonstration. Protesters also disrupted a taping of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert at the Auditorium Theater, where he was speaking to former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Right now, we're talking around midday Wednesday, when there's another demonstration slated to happen in Union Park. Our newsletter, Hey Chicago, will have the latest details, so make sure you've signed up at chicago.citycast.fm.
The National Lawyers Guild of Chicago says that at least 72 people were arrested, even though CPD and Larry Snelling have been saying around that 55 to 60 mark. They do say that they have been releasing people from Area 3 headquarters. And then one tip I saw online is that when these mass arrests happen, you see a lot of people saying call the Area 3 police, try to get them released. But actually organizers would say don't immediately start flooding the particular police station with calls, as lawyers may be trying to contact, organizers may be trying to contact. They're still trying to find out the identity of the people held on, and so family members. And so, Michelle, you were out at Union Park on Monday, as we've seen as we said, for the first round of the March on DNC Coalition. And this was the group of over 50 organizations that we have talked about before, mostly because they are by far the largest. Not only, as we heard earlier, are organizers there who represent Palestinian liberation, meaning the end of bombardment in Gaza, occupation in the West Bank. But you also see people out there marching for immigrant rights, people who want to defend LGBTQIA plus and reproductive rights, fighting for unions and the like. But we were also talking about the March on DNC coalitions because they were trying to get as close as possible to the United Center. We're going to get into a bit. But first, what was the most surprising thing you found when you were out there?
So on Monday, I mean, there was thousands of people. However, there wasn't like 20,000 or 30,000, which was, in the press conference with the coalition to march on the DNC. They kind of had set out this bigger number, but it was certainly like the biggest demonstration that there has been this week. I think definitely the most surprising thing for me was that a lot of people were from out of town. And, because we're in Chicago, I think I kind of came in thinking that, most people are going to be from Chicago. A lot of them expressed to me that they were out of town, whether they had decided they were coming months ago, last year when the DNC was announced to be in Chicago. Some people decided a week ago. Some people had decided the night before that they were going to come out for this. And some of the people also came in with organizations they were part of.
My name's Gemini. No, I'm not from Chicago. I flew in from Tacoma, Washington. I arrived last Friday to help with setup. There was a lot of work that went into making this possible, like printing signs and painting banners, so we've been doing that for the last week. I'm out here with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization because I can see that the genocide in Palestine needs to stop, and we have collective power to help that happen, right? For me personally, I'm Osage Indigenous here. Well, not to Chicago, our reservation's in Oklahoma, but I can't help but ache with the pain that I see from other people also being dispossessed from their land. So that's part of the personal reason that I'm out here today.
And when did you decide that you were going to come to Chicago for the DNC?
As soon as I found out that it was going to be here.
What do you hope that the people inside of the United Center, in the DNC, what do you want them to get from all this?
I want them to see that the people who they represent, the people who elected them, the people who gave them power and pay their paychecks with our tax dollars, want them to change what they're doing. We are asking, we are begging, we are fighting for them to stand up for Palestine, change their policy, change their perspective, divest, and stop sending our tax dollars for genocide.
Some people just came on their own, just driving hours to make it, like Perry King, who came in the day before.
I drove here. I decided I could come and I should come. So I drove here from D.C., about a 12-hour drive.
Why do you think this is such a important reason to be here?
Because voting's not going to change anything. Voting for Democrats sure ain't going to change nothing. We got to take to the streets, and that's the only way we're going to be heard. And I'm hoping more people are going to show up, and we got to have a massive crowd, man. We need a big crowd. I think a lot of people are afraid because of 68 and the Chicago police and all that. Yeah.
Are you afraid?
No, not at all. I'm afraid of being complicit in genocide is what I'm afraid of.
What do you want the Democrats inside the DNC right now, inside of the United Center right now, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to get from this?
That is a massive crowd of people that supports that supports the Palestinian human rights. Pretty soon it's going to come back to haunt you if you don't right now have a ceasefire and an arms embargo right now. That's the only way. That's the first thing they can do.
Michelle, I mean, When I think about some of the issues that people are marching for, none of these are new. Folks have been marching for decades, for generations. But with the DNC and this particular moment we're in, as you talk to protesters, did some people feel, I guess, more hopeful that something can be done now? When you talk to protesters, how did you feel from them?
I think being out there and, listening to people, just how they felt so moved to come here. And when I would ask them, like, why do you think right now it's such a pivotal moment? And they were just like, if not now, then when? I think what was interesting too is a lot of people were saying, like, they would point at the rally, at the crowd, and they'll be like, these are the people that the Democrats, like, these are Democratic voters. Either they once were, or like they have always been. And they're basically saying, like, the people inside the United Center, they need to be scared. They need to be worried because these are the people that they have, like, voted for.
This is their base, and this is what they want.
Exactly. This is their audience. And if you want to secure that seat, then you need to listen to these people because they're the ones that, would vote for them.
Back to school often means going back to the doctor's office, and there are many types of appointments that are essential to your child's well-being. And if you have a student that is starting, let's say, the second grade, like my niece, then they are most likely due for their first orthodontic visit. Now, often it can be very stressful trying to find the proper time, funds, and doctors for the various appointments. For orthodontia, orthodontic experts is where the best value, quality, and accessibility align. They provide exceptional orthodontic care with various options, including traditional metal, gold, ceramic, and lingual braces and clear aligners. They also accept most major insurances and even create personal payment plans. Furthermore, they provide evening and weekend availability that will easily fit into your busy back to school schedule. And the best part is that they are always located conveniently near you. So why wonder? Find out if orthodontic treatment is right for your child now with a no-cost consultation. Obviously, the amount of protests that are out there, many of them are aligned with like the March and DNC coalition. But it is important to note that you also see pro-Israel counter protesters out there. But when we think back on the March on DNC coalition, there was a lot of back and forth on the protest route, whether they would have a sound system or porta potties. And I saw pictures that were like 7, 8 porta potty for all of these thousands of people. It still doesn't seem right. I mean, how did all of that work out in the end from what you saw on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, this was debated for literally days before the actual rally and protest went on. A big thing is that they wanted to be like within sight and sound of the United Center, which of course was a big point of tension because the people at the United Center, they want to protect the United Center. They have all these roads blocked off. Residents who live there have to do ID checks like we talked earlier this week. And so that was a big point because they're not going to, they didn't want to let people that close to the United Center for the safety of those inside the DNC. But of course, the coalition, organizers felt like, well, what's the point of a protest if the people that were protesting, aren't going to see us, aren't going to hear us? Like the point is to create some kind of disruption. And not just the disruption of the neighborhood, right? Who like really has nothing to do with any of this. It's just the fact that they live close to where a political convention is happening. But that was a really big thing. And also another kind of point, like you mentioned, was the route, which was shorter than they wanted. They were really worried about bottlenecks happening, which is like when you take a large crowd and kind of like force them to go through a very narrow street. I mean, we were walking, when the protest actually occurred, we were walking through residential areas. And so, of course, these are much smaller streets than like a large avenue would permit. And you pointed out the porta potties. There was about 7 porta potties. And even before the rally even started, there was already a long line to go to the bathrooms. Personally, I was worried about that myself. I was like, I don't want to need to use the bathroom and have to wait in this line, to the point where I was like, I'm just not really even going to drink water. I think a lot of people were concerned at the fact that, people were out here with their families as well. And so they felt disrespected in a way where it's like, we're coming to you the way you want us. You want us to announce when we're going to protest? Okay, we'll let you know. We'll let you know how many people we think are going to be there. We'll let you know our plans in ahead. But the fact that, they felt like the city couldn't accommodate to them was really hard for them. And they also felt like they had to fight for the things that they ended up receiving, which at the end they felt like wasn't enough. And so I spoke with spokesperson for the coalition and organizer, Fayani Aboma Mijana.
I live in Logan Square. I'm in the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And the Chicago Alliance stands shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. Palestinian Community Network.
Now, you've been kind of helping organize this movement for a while. What is some of the biggest challenges that you face during the organizing part of this?
The biggest challenge that we've faced in organizing this march is probably the degree that the government has gone to stop us from protesting. At one point, the city wasn't allowing us to have a stage, amplified sound, and they wouldn't give us any porta potties. Can you imagine what that would have been like if we didn't have porta potties out here? And it was through our struggle, we mobilized the masses to put pressure on the city that we were able to get the stage, and we were able to get the sound amplification, and we were able to get the porta potties.
So it sounds like with city officials, it's been complicated trying to get the things you want. When you guys finally, you guys fought for them and finally received them, how do you feel like the city is responding to this rally, this protest now?
The city is not monolithic. We know that the police don't like what we're doing. Initially, they threatened that they would do mass arrests of our protests. But we also know that there are elements in the city that respect the right to protest, like the mayor. The mayor was a tie-breaking vote for the ceasefire resolution. Chicago is the biggest city in the country to have a ceasefire resolution. What I want the people to get from this gathering, the people at the United Center, is that working and oppressed people, the people they claim to represent, black and brown people, queer, trans, women, are united in the fact that we don't stand with this genocide and we want it ended. And they should fear that.
As Fayani and I were speaking, it was around 11:45, right? 15 minutes before the actual rally was supposed to start. And that's when we started seeing police rolling in on bikes, on foot, creating this really long line, this perimeter, kind of waiting for the crowd to actually get bigger and bigger. And I asked if there was any concerns about, the police presence. And they said that their presence that itself just creates attention. And so, I think their biggest note was just they were a little worried about this tension because they felt like they were unwanted there in the first place.
So after you spoke with Fayani, were you able to meet with anyone else who was from Chicago?
Yeah, I spoke to Lauren, a Chicagoan, but also a student who was part of Columbia University's encampments in New York earlier this spring, which, as a reminder, just like a lot of the college encampments throughout the U.S., it caught a lot of media attention, and it was broken up by a really big police raid back in April.
I'm from Andersonville. I'm from the north side. I saw the beginning of the movement in college campuses for Palestine that started this past year. So I kind of knew that it wasn't something that I could ignore. Now, because we have so many big figures here because of the DNC, it's important that we make our presence known. And also, I feel like the media tends to misconstrue a lot of the movement. I remember being called violent and aggressive when the vast majority of the movement for Palestine is a peaceful resistance movement. And it's just, I feel like it's important to show up in person, have people physically see us rather than on the other side of a screen.
Chicago draws the line. We stand up for Palestine. We stand up for Palestine. Welcome everyone. My name is Nazik Sankari, and I am co-chair of the U.S. Palestinian Community Network Chicago. And co-chair of the Coalition to March on the DNC. On behalf of the coalition, I'm honored to welcome you to Chicago today.
So the March on DNC Coalition has had the biggest demonstration so far, but I want to go back to this Tuesday protest in West Loop where we saw mass arrests somewhere between 55 to 70, depending on who you ask. Who organized this protest?
So this protest was done by a group that is completely unaffiliated. The group is called Behind Enemy Lines.
Unaffiliated with the March on DNC coalition?
Yes. And they were pretty explicit about they had planned for more confrontational protests, calling for a lot of the same things that we heard from protesters at Union Park. WBEZ had a good preview of the march ahead of the DNC, and a lot of their social posts beforehand talked about expecting a violent clash with police. And once again, we saw a huge police presence. In fact, there was more media and police than protesters at a point. And police did, in fact, use batons, and there was reports that, people couldn't leave even after there was order to disperse. Superintendent Larry Snelling said after that they did not, in fact, do kettling, which is what this is called. But there's protesters who said that they did feel like they couldn't disperse after they were ordered to.
Yeah, I have seen videos from the protests. I've seen videos of the mass arrests. And this is exactly kind of what I was alluding to in our coverage over the last few weeks, because this was a protest that, while it was well known, media outlets knew, the police obviously knew that it was going to take place. It wasn't one that I believe was permitted, that was expecting or planning to watch a particular route. But they've been in direct confrontation with police, and very much were preparing and expecting that. And in some ways, really leaned into that, right? The goal in some of these protests is directly to be confrontational, to confront the violent arm of the state at the front lines of the protests. And these mass arrests, again, the police had already set up this dynamic of if a protest is not permitted, if it isn't given the go ahead, that we will move forward with mass arrests. We've been talking so much about the history of political conventions in our city, and this is nothing like the police violence that we saw in '68, but we knew that there were going to be clashes with police. And then, we're filming this, or we're recording this midday Wednesday. I'd argue the largest protest is still potentially yet to come, and I think we all expected some form of clash between protests, and I don't want to get into sort of a comparison of what we've seen in the last couple of years. But it with the number of people that were in town to protest, I don't think we have yet seen the type of arrest, the type of violence that is possible. Michelle, what's next as this convention comes to a close tonight?
So the group, the March on DNC, the coalition, the same folks who rallied on Monday, they're also expected to march again on the last day ahead of Harris's official nomination acceptance speech. And so, like you said, a lot of people are expecting to see a much larger crowd than there was on Monday. But we'll definitely stay in the loop to see how that progresses and how it ends up turning out.
Well, I've been following the March on DNC 2024's Instagram ahead of tonight's protest. And not only will they be live streaming on their YouTube starting around 5 p.m., but they also provide a safety guide for people who may be considering joining the protest tonight. And so if you want to participate, visit their website, follow one of the Instagram pages of the coalition members to learn the best ways to protect yourself and your friends while you're out there. Michelle, I appreciate you making time to go out to Union Park on Monday, and I know our CityCast listeners appreciate it too.
Thanks, Jacoby.
Of course, I can't let you go without some good news. The Chicago Black Dance Legacy Project has a concert this weekend. Divination, the Dancing Souls of Black Folks, is taking place this Saturday night at Harris Theater in Millennium Park. You can see ballet, footwork, contemporary, and everything in between. Tickets are free, but RSVP is required. You can check the link in our show notes. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. Be safe out there, and we're going to talk to you bright and early tomorrow. Peace.